Do you need a Frost Mage build with the highest damage potential, excelling at both single target as well as AoE damage, and be a top performer when it comes to raids and any other content, as well as just incredibly fun to play? Then I got the Frost Mage build for you. What's up, world? Utopia here, back in with another video. Today we're checking out all things Blue Protocol Star Resonance. So first off here, we're going to go over everything from gearing, talents, rotation, your gemstones and modules, even what you should prioritize with refining and reforging, as well as a whole bunch more there. So before anything, we really got to get into our talent tree, as that's going to kind of expand into everything else. Once we have the talent tree set up, then we can get onto our skills, what we're kind of utilizing there, as well as our gear and everything else that follows. I will try to have the most accurate order for this on what you should be spending your points on and how you should go about that for damage. So if you're like level 30 or 40, you actually can put out more damage at that point depending on your pathing. That actually matters quite a lot, as some of these perks and some of these talent points will give you quite a substantial damage increase, so it does matter your pathing with this. Where first off, we are going into an intellect node, right into an energy saving. The reason why is we want to come all the way down here into deep cold magic spear. That's going to give us a 70% damage increase, but it costs 100% more of the time. Now you might be saying, will I have any mana issues? Not at this point. With all these top 30 skills here, by the way, if you are just starting the game, you actually do need to get every single point in this skill tree. So that's why we skipped this first skill tree. It doesn't matter. You need every single point here in order to progress into our spec here, which we also are taking, and this is an icicle build. So we are going into the icicle specialization, which is this one here. But next up here, we're going to come down to our right, and then we're going to grab Frost Blade. That's going to increase our damage 20%. Again, these two perk points have a substantial single target damage increase. That's really what you want, is single target damage right away. Mage is always good at AoE, so we're not progressing that just yet. We really want the single target damage. Which leads me on to my next pathing change here. In previous videos, I had you come down to the left and grab some of this stuff. However, we're going to come down and we're going to try to get Endless Cold as quick as possible, as Endless Cold actually did get a pretty massive buff here, and this is going to be a substantial damage increase when we pair it with some other abilities. So we're going to grab Endless Cold. The way Endless Cold works is every 20 frost crystals that you do cast. I just want to go over this quickly because I feel like a lot of people, or some people actually did get this wrong, but you're not hard casting your Frost Lance there. What you want to do is you want to be able to proc a Frost Crystal. Now you could do that a few ways. We're just going to go ahead and do a Crystal Veil, as a Crystal Veil is going to give us the, as you can see at the bottom right, we have our Frost Crystal procs. That's going to allow us, when we use our one key, or in this case our Frost Lance, that's going to get us an instant cast. You see, I didn't full cast that there. So just some note for some people. I know some people were like, I had somebody in my previous comments say that they were doing more damage autoing, and I do believe the issue there was that they were not doing the instant cast with Frost Lance with that. So just be wary. We are instant casting that one. Once we get our instant cast out with the Frost Crystals, when we consume 20 of those, we can then cast a Meteor Storm over and over again, and this thing will ramp your damage in raid. I'm talking about, like, you can pass everybody last second with using Endless Cold. Even if you're a couple million damage down from other people, you'll be able to progress much further than that. So don't worry there, this one does substantial damage, especially when we pair it into another ability here. Now this is also different because we're at 70, so we're going to be taking some Blizzard stuff, which I'll get into in a minute here. Originally you would go Crystal Veil, and you would kind of skip some Blizzard talent points here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to kind of invest a little bit of points into a really good section here. So we're going to come down to the right side tree, and we're going to go into this one. We really don't care about this talent point. We're to come down into here. We're going to grab, like I said, Snow Shadow. Then we're going to come down into Quick Frozen Blast, and then down to our bottom right, Deadly Frost Lance. This ability is absolutely insane. This is so good in raids. If your raid is struggling with hard mode right now, this thing can absolutely help you carry. Like I said, you can output between 2 to 3 million plus damage in that remaining second, or in that remaining time period, because you're doing so much damage, and that actually does outpace a ton of other abilities here. You can get rid of these 6 perk points and put them in other places. It will not outperform Deadly Frost. I've done this testing multiple times on the target dummy, and I've also done the math for you here. It is 7% better and beyond, depending on what talent points we're taking. So a lot is done there with this ability. Next up here, we're going to go to our bottom left because we do want some talent points here. These are actually really good. When we come into here, we'll take Ice Attack. First up, Shattering Strike, of course. Then we'll come down, grab the Int node, then a Look damage. Pretty good there for some single target damage, as well as our Glazed Vastness. A nice 8% damage increase. Doesn't beat out our Deadly Frost yet still, but again, either one there, very, very good. We'll also come down here and we're going to grab our Glacial Hymn Frost Domain. That's going to increase your damage by 25% when you are standing inside of your ultimate ability. So I'll showcase that here really quickly. When we do pop our ultimate, you do see this little tiny circle here. This actually does get decreased when we take that talent. As long as you're standing inside this, you actually do a 25% damage increase. That's quite nice there. I do believe it lasts around 12 seconds, and you can cast that every 60 seconds. This is just an insert really quickly. I did make one small mistake here, so if you see these notes taken in the video, do not take these. We're going to reset these talent points here. We actually do not want these two nodes here. We don't really care for Sharp Blizzard. You're not casting it enough, so I find that it doesn't really matter where you're increasing the crit rate by Blizzard and the damage of Blizzard. I don't really find Blizzard to be that strong anyways, so we're not going to take the Sharp Blizzard here. Next up here, we're no longer taking Continuous Stream. That was something that I recommended here. We're actually skipping out on that one for right now. I'll explain why, but we're skipping out on this one. We're going to come down into here, and as you see at this point, we also need 50 talent points. You see active 50 talent points. A reason why we didn't not take this section. We need the 50 talent points at this point, and you literally need every single point right now that we're using. There's really nothing else you can take. So we kind of should just take Deadly Frost Lance, as if we get rid of these points and we take some other stuff here, there's no point. And as well as Continuous Stream is not going to outperform a Deadly Frost Lance, so we just want to invest on that side too, just to justify it even more. Next up here, we're going to come down into Frozen Stars, and we're really just going to try to push down as quickly as possible all the way to the end. We'll take Frost Comet, then we'll go through, take our Int node, and then we're going to come down into here, we'll take another Int node, and come down into Frost Lance Barrage. During Permafrost, Frost Lance will fire 2 consecutive shots. A very, very strong ability here. Again, you're basically doing double damage, so another nice single target increase. We're also going to come down into here, another Int node, and then take Infusion Sublimation, as that's going to increase our Frost Crystal by 1, so now we have 4. As that's going to increase our Frost Crystals by 1, and during Permafrost, we can increase our damage by 100. When that does end, we'll get our Frost Crystals regened back. I'll show you how to do that. Very, very cool there. Then we'll also come back up into here. Now is where we're going to kind of increase our Permafrost, because we've been taking some abilities here. So we're going to come down into our bottom left, and then we're going to take Freezing Meteor Storm. We don't really care about this first section here, where a 20% chance to apply Frozen throughout the duration of your Permafrost. That doesn't really matter. It's nice in like vaults and stuff, but we're not really pertaining to that. At least the Frozen stuff here with Meteor Storm. What we do care about here is our Frost Lance and our Meteor Storm critically hitting, extending the Permafrost, which ties directly into our Permafrost stuff here. So very, very nice. That's going to help us a ton with also being able to get EC or Endless Cold. That's a very good pairing. Next up, we'll come here, we'll go to our left side, where Glacial Fury, if you consume 15 Frost Crystals, that'll enhance your next Blizzard, and you'll be able to instant cast that. So that's very nice. We really only want to cast Blizzard when we can instant cast it, so we do need this talent nearly for sure. We'll come down into here, and we'll also grab Critical Cold, as that's going to help our Permafrost even more, tying into our Freezing Meteor Storm, where we are, during the Permafrost period, we're increasing our damage dealt by 15%, and we're also increasing the allies' critical rate by 3%. So quite huge here for your team. This is a very good team utility, and also for yourself. We are going to take Meteor Storm Expansion to increase our Meteor hit count, again tying directly into our EC. Now we have 2 skill points here. I've done a lot of testing with this. I've taken Continuous Stream, didn't do well. I've taken Frost Shock, didn't do well. I've mixed around points to take Bitter Cold, also didn't do well. There's really nothing here that's going to help add to it. Even removing some of these points up here, taking Frost Assault, didn't help enough and didn't give us enough damage. What your most damaging ability here, or at least what you can do the most right now, is actually going into Icicle Volley. For every 10 cast of Frost Lance, a Piercing Ice Spirit is launched, so you can then swing and grab that. We now have 1 perk point remaining. Here's the problem. We really can't grab any other perk, so we're kind of wasting this one a little bit. I've seen some people go into like an intellect node here and just getting a +10 int. What I just go into is because the only perk point we can get here is Blizzard Dual Spears. Within 8 seconds after casting Blizzard, a Frost Lance can fire to an additional target. Just good for dungeoning, so that's what I use my last point on. If you wanted to, though, go ahead and take an int node, or you can also take a cold node. We have one here, an ice attack, so if you wanted to take an ice attack node, you could. This, in my opinion, is the most optimized pathing here and the most optimized build overall. I've tried to do a ton of testing. In fact, I've spent a few hours on this, testing each ability, switching things out on the right side of the tree, the left side of the tree, mixing talent points around. This, by far, is the strongest we can get. Moving on here, we have our skills and skill books. So as you can see, for our equip, we do have Meteor Storm, Crystal Veil, Blizzard, and Permafrost. For our skill books and prioritization there, realistically, you want all of them to at least be T3+, with their main ability being T6. So as you see here, we have Frost Lance T6. This is priority here. Essentially, you do want everything T3 first, or at least majority of your abilities T3 first. Permafrost, Meteor Storm, as well as Glacial Hymn, you definitely want at the T3 mark. You could skip out on Crystal Veil and Blizzard for right now. These really aren't utilized as much, but as long as you have those 4 at T3, that should be about good. Then you want to push the next 2 abilities, which is Frost Lance and Meteor Storm, to a T6. If you don't know how the books actually work, I do want to run down here very quickly, because there is some variance here that you'll see between these. So for the example in Blizzard, as we see from T1 to T2, it's a 22% increase, 22.3%. You can get fractional if you want to there. But when we do jump from T2 to T3, we get around a 67% increase. So it's a jump up from T1 to T2. Now, this doesn't apply to T3 to T4. You see, from T3 to T4, we only get that 22 or 23% increase. And the reason being is at every 3rd tier, you do get that bump up. That's the reason why we want to go to T6 on our Frost Lance, because that's going to have the highest damage increase. I wish I could show it. I'm already maxed out though, so I can't show you the advance on that. It is very nice, and you do get quite the damage increase. This is our main ability. We also want to T6 out our Meteor Storm after we have the rest T3, because our EC is really good here in combination. There is one swap out I would have done here. I would have T3'd my Blizzard instead of Crystal Veil. It might be why I actually reset. There is something in the store right now, or if we do look in the colorful store, you can actually use an Astral Recall key, and this will be converted to your current class. This will refund basically everything that you spent books on and the levels that you spent on as well. Any upgraded skills here you see will be reset to level 1, and all of the bound Luno spent on skill advancements will be refunded as well, and your advanced books will be refunded 1-to-1 for your current class. So make sure you're understanding that they finally did fix this. People thought it was just 1-to-1 for the classes or any class, but it is for your current class. So you can reset your skills here if you need to, just by using that Astral Key. 200 isn't too bad as far as the bound orbs. And then Rain Call maybe would be priority over Blizzard or Crystal Veil, and then those would be the last 2. But at that point, it's not going to matter too much, as you'll probably have plenty of books. Next up here is our gear prioritization, what we're looking for, what synergizes very well, and what stats can't roll. I'm going to have a full list here on what stats cannot roll and what you should prioritize for each and every single piece. Crit and luck is going to be number 1 prioritization. Always crit first, having the higher stat. As you can see here, this is probably a BIS weapon, probably best in slot that you can get, because the M attack at 3% is absolutely insane. I believe that's the highest roll it can be. And then also having crit, luck, and then crit for the 3rd stat is really insane. Now, even if a piece cannot roll crit or luck, you can always get crit and luck on that 3rd stat there. You just have to re-roll for it, or try to roll when you're reforging. And then again, you always want to prioritize crit, then luck. If you can't roll one or the other, then usually versatility will be in its place. And you never want haste, so don't worry about that. As you see, the weapon can roll crit and luck. The helmet, I do believe, cannot roll crit. But I'll have the full list there so you can go through all the different pieces. And essentially, I've covered this every single time, so you should get the gist by now. But just go ahead and go off the diagram on what we're actually shooting for each and every single piece and what it cannot roll. For our third stat right now, again, we always do want crit, but eventually you might want to swap into luck. Once your crit does get to around 45-ish%, you might then want to push luck up a bit. If you do hit that, then it's okay to kind of get luck on certain pieces, but for right now I'm running crit on everything, as well as a crit gem. So you'll see here we're running a Ruby Abyss 3, which gives us plus 30 crit and plus 8 int. Eventually you're going to want to go to a higher version of this where you get some more critical there, and that's where you might want to swap in some luck eventually. Now, other than our skills, we of course have the Imagine section. This one is highly debated, so I do want to kind of go off some variants there. This is going to be dependent on your playstyle and a few other things, and really what I've come to find out using some of the stat bases here, I'll kind of go over the examples. If you feel a little bit differently, then you can run something else. The one that is undisputed, though, is Muku Chief. Everyone's running this thing. Absolutely insane. You get a 10% increase to your crit damage passively. Absolutely insane for Icicle, especially Icicle, much more than Frostbeam, even because of how much crit we're doing. And then we also get a ton of additional bonus here when we do pop. And it has 2 charges, so for 40 seconds rather, the duration 40 seconds out of 90 seconds, we're getting these bonuses here, which is absolutely insane. So pretty much undisputed is a Muku Chief. If you are a free-to-play player, you could swap in a Warrior Tyrant or even a Muku Scout, as opposed to a Muku Chief if you wanted to and if you need to. You see, I do have my Inferno Goblin 5-star or C5. Some people do recommend running a Muku Scout. The problem that I do find with Muku Scout is that if we look here, now this is both on the global client as well as the CN client. Both of them are the exact same here. It only grants a buff to attack. It says that, but it actually grants the buff to M-Attack as well. We don't know if they're going to change this, if they're going to just swap out the description and fix it, depending on what they do. And we always want M-Attack. Attack does not apply to us. If this only buffed attack, it would not be good. Muku Scout, realistically, in most scenarios, when you're playing Icicle, is only going to have around a 40 to 50% uptime. This is documented by the CN client, as well as a lot of other places are documenting the 60%, really realistically 40 to 50% uptime on it, meaning that the Goblin Mage is actually around 8% to 10% better, especially at C5. So the problem is, a lot of people are doing their testing with Muku Scout on a target dummy. That's not going to happen in most raids and most dungeons. You're not fighting a target dummy. You have to actually do mechanics, so the buff does fall off. You can't just stand still in the mechanic. Maybe later on, when we can actually kind of cheese the content, you might have better odds there with a Muku Scout. I don't think it's a good investment for right now, especially given that they could change it at any moment. However, if you're a free-to-play player, you could either run a Warrior Tyrant or a Muku Scout in tandem with a Goblin Mage. But you really should try for a Muku Chief. It's just absolutely insane. And then again, I would always recommend running a Goblin Mage. If you could C5 it, even better. If you're a total pay-to-win player, like you can just afford anything, and I'm not talking about like $200, $300, $400. I'm talking about like $1,000+ in the actual game. Yes, like over $1,000. If you can afford to spend that much, you should run a Muku Chief as well as a Vino Bazaar Incubator. The reason why is his passive here is very good for intellect, and some of his buffs here making it vulnerable is very nice. You do have to get this thing to C3 though, as a Goblin Mage actually does beat it at C5 versus a C1 and C2. This thing needs to be C3, so it does have to be up here doing the C3 damage as opposed to C1. As you see, our int's up to 11%, so you do need to C3 this thing. This is going to cost you quite a bit to get up here, probably around $400 or $500, and then getting a Muku Chief, again, also adding to that. So you do need a lot of money if you do want to do that, but that would be the full pay-to-win build there, the Muku Chief plus the Vino. One quick note about gearing here. When we do go to gearing, of course, you want to get your level 60 exchange and do be exchanging this out daily for these. You also do have your raid vendor over here. I couldn't find this originally, but your raid vendor, you do get crystals for farming both the new section over here in the arena town, as well as doing your weekly raid or weekly hard raid. You'll get some of these, so you can go ahead and craft and actually get some of these pieces. You have to look up. I'll probably do a showcase of these eventually on which ones are really good, because there's a set piece bonus for these, but eventually we'll get into that. Moving on here for reforging, just a quick tip. I've always recommended this. Some people disagree with it, which is fine. That's okay. I still think this is better, and I've kind of noticed that having the stat prioritization does matter more. As you see, I haven't fully reforged this item. The reason being is because your third stat here, where I have crit, actually can re-roll. So for example here, I'll kind of swap out my helmet here and just utilize that, where if you do actually put a gemstone in here, you see that we just lost crit. Now it has luck. So you do actually, or can lose rather, your third stat. So what I like to do is, until I get a crit, unless you really need the gear score, I just go for it. And that's what I would do. I would always just go for your third stat. I know right now the raid, for example, wants you to be at 15k ability score. I've been able to do hard mode raid at 13k ability score, and I've been number 1 and number 2 on the charts. And that's against other people that are near 16,000 gear score, people that are 15 or 14.5k. So I've always stat prioritized there. I do really agree with that, and I really do think if you prioritize your stats, your third stat does matter. You also do want to prioritize level 40 gear over 60 if you don't have the correct substats. That I also do recommend. So you'll see some pieces here I still have 40 over the 60 because this is crit and haste, which I don't want. Where I have damage to bosses, this is crit and luck, which is better in this instance because we don't want haste. We really do want that luck. So your substat here is better, and it is better to run. But unfortunately, a lot of raid groups will require that 15k gear score. However, it's not more damage if your substats are wrong. That's the unfortunate part there. They're just trying to get people to kind of weed out certain things. Also, the tip here for refining, I would skip a lot of these for right now at least, because if you don't need the gear score again, and you really get a gear score bump at level 5 and then level 10. So right now I do have my weapon at 8. You see these give refined M attack, where this one gives armor. So I would skip out on the ones that only give armor right now, and I would just level 8 on everything that gives M attack. That's my plan at least, and getting those to 10. I'm going to kind of wait on these as they do require a lot of resources, and I want to save those for when you have to do level 9 and level 10. You see this one that takes 50 and 10 level 1 crystals. So I'm just kind of farming those out right now and kind of saving so that I can get these to level 10 and just kind of not using on these right now just yet. So I would recommend on focusing on the ones that give M attack and doing those first. Next up here, we're going to go through our build rotation, and I'm going to go through this very slowly. I'm not going to do it fast. You can kind of learn how to do it quickly from that better, I feel like. So we're just going to go through it one time. If you want to refer to my old videos, I do go through it fast and slow, but we're just going to do it again here so you can see with the 4 crystals. I saw some people were commenting on that, so you can see what we kind of do there. The first thing is I'm always going to pop my alt. So right away, we're going to pop that Glacial Hymn to get that down so we can get that AoE effect down. Then I'm going to go into both of my Imagines here while popping a Crystal Veil and then a Meteor Shower. We're trying to rack up our crystals there, so essentially we get it to 4. But essentially we're proccing those to get 4. Then we're going to go into Permafrost. The reason why we want to wait for Permafrost here is because Permafrost will actually refund from you saw from our talents. So when we pop Permafrost here, we can pop into this and spend all of our crystals. I'm not going to go through and spend any more here. I'm going to try to kind of knock it down to 0. But as you see here, once our Permafrost does end, we've now just been given 4 more additional crystal shards there. And in between, while you're doing Permafrost, you're of course wanting to both pop your Crystal Veil as much as you can, as well as a Meteor Shower. After a certain point, you'll see once we do hit 15, we're actually going to get an Enhanced Blizzard, so we can pop down our Enhanced Blizzard. It is now an instant cast, which is very nice. Once we do hit up to 19, we're at 18 right now. You see in the bottom right, we have the blue. Once we do hit up to 19 spent crystals, which you see now we've hit 20, we can then pop our EC. And this essentially allows us to cast Meteor Storm, basically as long as this cooldown lasts. And you see we pop it a ton there. That thing does insane damage, especially at the end. That's what I was talking about there. Because we're infinitely casting, especially AoE damage, your EC proc is going to do a ton of damage for you. You're always, and then again, if you run out of crystals and everything's on cooldown, you do just want to auto attack. So you could swap in your auto attacks, as your auto attack can actually generate crystals. It is kind of rare, as you see. It does take quite a while to get those, but you do want to be kind of running back and forth between your cooldowns as well as popping your auto attack. Once you get to a certain point, you're not going to be using your auto attack a lot anymore. That's why I kind of recommended to wait on using it in the books. But overall, that's kind of your rotation, just a baseline there. That one is a bit disputed. You can experiment with it if you want to try to maybe not pop your alt, pop your Imagines first. then pop into your ult, then pop Crystal Veil, or even pop a Crystal Veil first, then pop into your ultimate, then do your Imagines. That way you already have some of the crystals generated. You can do that as well. There are a few different variances there that you can do with your starter, but once you kind of get into the rotation of things, as long as you're not hard casting your Frost Lance, as you see here, we only want to instant cast it, so make sure you're just doing your best job to not full cast that. Make sure you do have a crystal. Overall, that's about covered for today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.